Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Success Series. I am your host, David Berg, with our co-host, Michael Konowski. Very special guest today on episode 35, Polina Groman. She is a serial entrepreneur. She is currently the co-founder of Social Club, which is a club for exited serial entrepreneurs that have either sold their previous company or looking to scale. She's been involved in a tremendous amount of projects throughout her career. She is also a mom, which always comes first for her. We're excited to explore her journey. Polina, if you can get us started with just a little background on how you grew up, what your family life was like.
Sure, thank you so much for having me. I'm originally from Ukraine, and my family immigrated here in the early 90s. When we immigrated here, I didn't speak a word of English.
Wow.
When we lived in Ukraine, I had no idea that we were Jewish. It was a topic that was never discussed, and when I got here, my mom told me that I'm going to Jewish school, and I was like, why am I going to Jewish school? We're not Jewish. And that was the beginning of my relationship with God. A very interesting journey, but my childhood was great. It was very immigrant childhood, humble upbringing. My parents worked really, really hard, and they were just really, really happy that they were able to leave Ukraine and come to this country to give me and my sister a better life. I had no idea that we were poor until I got to high school, and I noticed there were kids in my school that drove cars, and our family didn't have a car. And I sort of then realized, oh man, not everybody's poor like us. And the beginning of the entrepreneurial bug started when one day I came home from school, and my dad was pacing, and he was always nervous and trying to figure out, how to put food on the table. And I really wanted to buy a pair of Nike sneakers. It was something that I wanted. I desired it so much. So I finally got the guts after practicing in the mirror, and I asked him, Dad, can I get these $90 Nike sneakers? And my dad sat me down. He looked me in the eyes. He goes, look, you can never have those sneakers.
Wow.
I will never have them. You will never have them. Just stop wanting these things. We're regular people. We're lucky to be alive. We're lucky to have food on the table, and you can't have it. And I went to sleep that night, and I said, maybe he can't have it, but I'm going to have it. And I got myself those sneakers, and they were my prized possession for many, many years. And everything in life is about perspective. So at 14 years old, my perspective changed that I can get things that I want. My family's circumstances don't matter. I'm resourceful, and I can figure things out. And those sneakers were evidence every time I wore them and looked at them that I could have the things that my family thinks we can't have.
Incredible. And Did the desire always stem from within you, or did it only manifest after that moment with the sneakers?
Always. I didn't, like I said, when I was younger, I just didn't realize because everybody around us didn't have much, so kind of didn't feel it. But when I became a teenager, I really just, it wasn't specifically money. It was freedom. It was having a certain type of a lifestyle. It was seeing how incredibly hard my parents were working, and they didn't have anything to show for it. And it sort of didn't make sense to me. How can you work so hard, because they always preach that, and have no results? Well,
Right.
It looked like other people weren't doing much, and they had everything. So I'm like, I want to learn how to do that. That's where it came from.
Amazing. And how many years did you live in Ukraine for before your family?
10.
10 years. What was that like? Was it challenging? Was it scary?
It wasn't bad, there was no wars there back then, but it was, it was a hard life. We lived many people in one apartment,
Right.
And it was struggle.
Do you ever have a desire to go back there at this point? Have you visited?
No, because all my family came here. My grandparents lived here. They died here. So everybody lived here. So no.
Got it. Okay. And then fast forwarding from that sneaker moment into the start of your career, did you go to college there? What did that progression look like?
So I always hated school.
Okay, me
with
too.
a passion. I just didn't understand what was the purpose of learning history when I could be out and doing something more productive.
Right.
And school just didn't agree with me. And I went to college, and my first year of college, I interned on Wall Street because one of my friends told me that they print money here. He was literally like, look, you could just call people send money to the company, and then they pay you, and it's the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, really? So I came in there was no women in that company,
Right.
except for the secretary. And I'm like, I want to try to do this. And that summer I made more money than both of my parents, and I dropped
Wow.
out of college.
Wow. Just as an intern.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of a different journey. And my parents said, look, if this is, we brought you here for the education and if this is what you want to do, you have to move out. And I'm like, okay. And it wasn't an easy journey because, everything that's shiny is not always gold.
Right.
Working on Wall Street was, challenging because it's grunt work. You're basically calling people 10 hours a day. People are hanging up on you, and you're working. As a woman, there was no other women on the floor, so you're working amongst men. You're working
Right.
10, 11-hour days. But it was a foundation of me seeing, again, what's possible in a short amount of time. And it's a great skill for everybody to have. I believe that every business owner should acquire the skill of cold calling and sales and just doing the grunt work and not trying to avoid it, because then everything else you can automate.
Couldn't agree more. Started my career that way too. What were you on Wall Street? Or were you selling bonds? Were you stocks? What was
Stocks.
it? Okay, and it was to direct to consumer.
Yep.
It was
Yep.
beautiful.
Back
So
then it
real
was
real Wall
direct-
Street,
yeah.
right?
Back then it was direct to consumer.
There was no Robin Hood at the time, right?
If anybody watched the Wolf of Wall Street,
Yeah.
I could tell you that movie is rated G to what was
Really?
yes, happening on Wall Street
Wow.
back in those days. It was the Wild West.
It really was. People
Yeah.
running around,
Yeah.
screaming.
It was insanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then so
Yeah.
I can only imagine from Wall Street to the next. What was right after that? So what followed that?
Yeah, I mean, after 2000, after the attacks on the Twin Towers, everything changed. The laws changed, the regulations changed. And I just, after selling penny stocks, I understood that it's all these entrepreneurs. They're somehow, making it. I want to understand what that's like. So, there was a lot of different projects and trying to understand what it's like. And I think what I didn't realize back then was I was always an entrepreneur. So I think that's what kind of gave me an advantage. But life is hard. People make it seem, especially today on social media, that things are just easy. Things are hard because as an entrepreneur, you have to wear every single hat.
Right.
Right? You're the CEO, you're the janitor, you're the marketer, you're the accountant, and you have to perfect every skill until you're able to hire other people. So there was, many different projects until I got into the recycling space, and that was the first big exit.
Got it. And what was the function in the recycling space?
So we collected used cooking oil from restaurants, recycled it into biofuel, and sold it also as a feedstock
Got
to
it.
companies that created insulation.
And how did that idea conceive? What was the kind of ideation behind it? How did it come about?
So it was really interesting because in Italy and across Europe, this wasn't a new idea. Recycling is very much an initiative in other parts of the world, but not here. And I was like, if they're doing it there and no one is doing it here, why don't I do it here? It's a unique idea. It's like unlike anything else. And if you go to the market, right, and ask the market, what does the market want? The market doesn't know what it wants if it's new. Like if the Wright brothers went to the market and back then asked, what do you want? They would say faster horses. Nobody would say an airplane.
Right.
So I tried to go to the market. The market wouldn't validate my idea. I tried to raise money. I had a lot of contacts from Wall Street. Everybody laughed. They were
Everybody laughed.
Everybody
Wow.
laughed. They said that it was dumb, that you're asking people to give you money for dirty oil.
Right.
Like literally oil that right now like restaurants are spilling down the drain. And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's going to be a big thing, and I feel it. And the answer was no. So we grassroots it. We had nothing. We had no budget. It was just an idea and a concept. And we grew to 1,200 and then 1,500 accounts in 18 months and sold it to a large
In 18
competitor.
months.
In 18 months.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Door to door.
It was really door.
hardcore-
You were
yeah.
knocking on restaurant by restaurant, and
Hardcore sales. And I don't recommend anybody to build their business that way,
Crazy.
but it was grunt work.
Right.
And I think today a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't want to do the work. They want the shortcut. We all want the shortcut, right? We all want the magic, bullet, the secret formula to success. The secret formula to success, and you hear it here first, is you. It's your ability to get up after you told no time and time again. It's your ability to believe in yourself. Well, no one believes in you. Well, everybody laughs at you and tells you it's a horrible idea. And it's your ability to also shift perspective when you need to, right? Because you wear one hat when you're raising money, you wear another hat when you're knocking on doors, you wear another hat when you have to learn a new skill. And it's the ability to shift like a chameleon, right? To to learning things and to doing everything and still keeping a smile on your face, because you're not going to be generating revenue in the beginning. And I think that this is what everybody wants. Like, what's the quickest path to cash? And that's the wrong question. What's the quickest path to create a system? Because once there's a system, you could take that system and give it to someone else and they can help you grow it.
What do you define as a system?
So you need a sales process. That's your first, because everybody's like, I need an assistant, and I need,
Right.
I need a VA, and now I need an AI, and I need marketing team. No, you need some kind of a system to bring in clients. And it could be as simple as maybe the system is cold calling. Maybe the system is email. Maybe the system is knocking on doors. Maybe today it's AI to help you with all of those things. But you need something, right, to validate one person taking out their wallet and paying you, because that's your first proof of concept. That's your first sort of a big deal, even if it's a tiny deal, because that validates that if one person paid me, more people can pay me, and I can find a way to do it at scale.
Right. Would you say that the first customer is the hardest to acquire?
Yes and no. Sometimes we get lucky,
Okay.
and because we get lucky, a lot of times we get in our head and we're like, I'm so special. I don't have to, oh my God,
It's going to happen with everybody, right?
And also sometimes we get lucky because not the first customer. Maybe it's your first 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever it is, and then you get greedy, right? Especially if you have investors, and you learn a lot about yourself in business. You see who you really are, because money doesn't make you; it exposes you.
I've heard that quote
Right?
before. It
I mean, think
magnifies
about it.
everything that you already
Yeah.
are, right?
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to have a spiritual foundation, and to have a humble mindset, and to have a student's mindset, to have a child's mindset, right? Because children are just curious.
Right.
And if you're curious, you can't lose.
Yeah, they have no preconditions of what things
Yeah.
should and shouldn't be. And then,
Yeah.
did you ever raise capital at the recycling company?
We tried.
You tried.
We tried. It just didn't work.
And then you bootstrapped the whole
Yeah.
thing, and you never
Yeah.
had,
Yeah.
all the way through exit, you never had to
Yeah.
raise any cash.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was no reason to. Yeah.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know how many businesses never raise cash and exit.
There's pros and cons to everything, right? So, and hindsight is 2020. Sure, everything would have been easier if we had at least, some money to
$500,000
start.
bucks, right.
At least
Right.
100.
Yeah, at the time, right?
But it forced us to perform. And again, a lot of times people give up too quick. They're too quick to come to a mindset of, it's too hard, I can't do it. No one's giving me money, they must be right, they have more experience than me. But again, if you're an innovator, if you're a contrarian, if you're bringing something to the market that doesn't exist, or if you're building a better mousetrap, you have to be your biggest cheerleader. You have to be your biggest supporter, and you have to be the person that also motivates other people. Because in the beginning, you don't have capital to pay other people. So how
Right.
do you motivate people to work night and day, to be in a space of excitement if you can't pay them?
Right.
It's you. That's what leadership is about. Everybody thinks leadership is, I'm going to tell everybody what to do while I sip margaritas on the beach, right? But that's not what leadership is. And I had to learn that, right? I didn't have any of these skills. Again, I dropped out of college, right? Leadership to me is being the person that goes first, that motivates people, that excites people. You have to build a vision just like God, right? If you're godly, you have to build a vision so strong and every day with a new perspective where people just want to follow you. And they're not following you because they're weaker than you. They're not following you because you're better than them. They're following you because they are enrolled in your vision. And that's our job as leaders, is to create that vision and to keep it alive.
What do you think? That's such a great point. What do you think within that is the number one thing that you can show or be so that others will want to be a part of your vision?
Well, first of all, you have to walk the walk, right? If you're asking people to knock on doors, you can't never knock on a door,
So
right?
do it with them.
Yes. And second is also constantly and consistently checking in on people and motivating them, because people are not self-sufficient, right? So we had something called the juice meetings, join us in creating enthusiasm. So Monday we set goals as a team, Wednesday midweek check-in, challenges, problems. Sometimes you call people will come to you and they're like, this person is a no, and then you call and the person's a yes, and then you show a person how to turn a no into a yes, right? And then the person's like, oh my God, if you could do that, I could do that. The attitude is always, if I could do it, you could do it. And what I always say to people, I have certain skill sets that I'm great at, but I suck at so many things. And I always want to hire people where it's easy for them, where it's difficult for me. I think that most founders are so like, it's me, it's all
Right.
me.
There's
it's
nothing
my
I'm not
baby.
good at. You're right.
Yes, and I could do everything myself, so I don't have to pay anyone, right? But the truth is, there are things that we really are horrible at. Well, other people it's so easy
and they're
for
excited
them,
about it, right?
And it's just it's like if you ask me to do tech stuff, I could do it,
right?
But like I'm not excited about it. It's not easy for me.
Right.
Like if you told me like create a funnel right now, I've done it many times. I could do it, but it's not a fun project for me.
Right.
While you give it to somebody that's a funnel builder, and they're like, oh my god, and you could do this and that. So it's also having the ability to divorce yourself from the idea that it's all you, that no one can do it as good as you, and also understanding that, you know, nothing is built in isolation. If you take example of any Fortune 500 company, Amazon is not Jeff Bezos. He's just the face of the company, right? There's so many people that make Amazon what it is. Apple wasn't just Steve Jobs, right? And a lot of times we get in our heads of like, no, I'm so special.
Right. This
you are
is
special. Yes, you are special, but there's other people that are special in other things, and together when we unite, we make it bigger and better.
And it wouldn't work without them, right? You need
exactly, but it's hard to have that perspective,
right? Because you started the company, it's your idea.
It's I'm the founder,
right.
And a lot of times, you know, especially when we raise capital, and the biggest and this is a shortcut because everybody wants a shortcut. If you're raising capital and you go to any investor and you say to them, I'm looking for money for marketing, what you're really saying to an investor is, I have no idea what I'm doing and I want to burn through your money to test it out. Right? And a lot of times they'll be like, why should I give you the money? Because it's me, it's my idea. There's so many great ideas out there. There's so many, especially now, again, with the power of AI, there's so many wonderful ideas. There's so many creative things that you could do. Ideas are not fundable, people are, right? Investors invest in people and systems, right? So it's your job when you're raising capital to understand that no one smart is going to give you money for ideas or just because they like you. They may give you a seed round or something small because they like you. But if you want someone that's consistently going to invest in your vision, that's consistently going to fund the next stage of what you're building, you have to divorce again yourself from it's the me project and turn it into the we project and think systematically, just like bigger companies. Even before you have anything, it's you and an assistant, great. I'm great at this, my assistant is great at this. Together, this is what we accomplish, right? And then the team just grows from there.
Right. So as somebody myself who's raising capital today and understanding those processes, what is the number one thing that you, from your experience and talking with millions of founders, that an investor looks at when investing in a company? Is it words that are said? Is it actions that they? What is like the one thing that you?
Well, there's a couple of things, right? Number one, do you have experience in what you're doing? And if the answer is no, that's fine because you could be innovative and doing something incredible that was never done before. You have to articulate, and it's a skill set. And none of us work on this, and it's one of the biggest skill sets when you're raising money. You have to articulate what's in your head and how big you think it could potentially be for you. And put it into the words again of what's in it for them. Like, because if you come to the meeting of what's in it for them, it's a 90% done deal. Because if I'm just think about it, it's a human psychology, right? I think that's the best word, is to how do I get the money? What's in it for me? But imagine if I came to you and I said, look, I have this idea. I don't know if you want to fund it or not. Here's why I think you should do it. And here's what's in it for you. The second I say what's in it for you,
their ears perk up.
But it's also because nobody's coming for them because they care about them. They care about the money. So if you're coming to the person of, here's what's in it for you. Here's the dividends. Here's how we're going to grow it. Here's the vision. Here's version 1, 2, and 15. The person, number one, immediately sees that you're prepared. And that's one of the biggest things that people want to know. Are you burning through my money? Right? Most people are nice. They won't say that to you. But as soon as you get to the piece of what do you need the money for, and it's marketing, 99.999% of the times, the answer is no, you can't have it. And that's how we kill a great opportunity to raise capital. Because again, we're looking of, I don't know what I'm doing. And what I'm looking for is to someone come and rescue me with their capital. But if I don't know what I'm doing, the cash is going to do nothing for me.
Right. That is an unbelievable thing. And I think 99% of founders don't approach it that way. It's very spiritual, definitely. So anybody that's listening needs to hone in, especially if you're raising money,
Yeah.
because you'll be different than the 99% of other people that are pitching the same investor, right?
I also think that you need to understand that a lot of investors have a thesis, right? So they invest in certain industries, they invest in certain things. You have to be prepared, right? So like if you're trying to raise money for a recycling company and I'm coming to a venture fund that only funds technology, it's an uphill battle right away before I open my mouth, because they don't invest in that. They don't understand that. It's not their thing, right? So you also have to understand, who am I speaking to? What do they care about? What kind of checks have they written before? Like, you have to really do your homework. And sometimes we don't do anything because my mom introduced me, or my cousin's, friend is on the board.
Right.
And that's horrible, because the person will take a meeting, but they're already walking into that meeting, just so you know, with no. Because
Really?
yes, the problem with people that we know is they're doing us a favor. And when it comes to money, I don't want to give money to you just because I like your mom or because I went to
Friends
school.
with your uncle,
right, exactly.
Right.
Yes, they'll take the meeting, but you have to understand it's not in your favor. You're not starting the meeting off in your favor. So again, it's your job to open your mouth immediately and to say, I know you took this meeting because you're friends with my mom, but I just want to let you know, I don't even know if I want to take your money. And the person will be like,
Wow.
what? The reason why I don't know if I want to take your money is because I did my research and I know you typically don't invest in these type of companies. I want to present an opportunity to you again and show you what's in it for you. And then we both decide if really this is a good opportunity for you. You see, like, you're diffusing the situation before you presented your pitch deck,
Right.
because the sale happens before. This is what people don't realize. They think that the sale happens when we go to the pitch deck and we start sweating when we come to the numbers, because we're projecting everything. We don't know anything, right? And a smart person knows all that. So what are they looking for? Yes, they want character. Yes, they want tenacity. They want someone who works hard. Yes. But what they also want, and this is a constant thought, like, when do I get my money back? What's the worst case scenario? What happens if everything goes down? Because if you start with those things, if everything fails, this is my plan to pay you back.
Say that from the initial, really?
Immediately.
You think that's,
yes.
You're already thinking if worst case scenario?
Yes. And then you get into the best case scenario, because you're constantly diffusing objections. So when you're getting to the end of your presentation, the chances of yes are like 80 to 90%. And I pitched countless
How many,
people.
would you say? Would you say hundreds? Yeah.
So, and I could tell you that I always would ask when somebody wouldn't write me a check, why, and when somebody would. And it's always been because the presentation was about me and how great I am and what I can do, how great my company is, and how great the returns are. But if the person is smart, and I just mean smart because this is what they do, they write checks, right? They may write me a check because they like me, but I don't want them to write me a check because they like me. I want them to be so enrolled in my vision where they're like, you asked for 50K, I want to give you 100. And I will be like, no, I don't want to take you 100 today. Let me hit this milestone and then I want you to give me 300.
Right.
And the person would be like, what? I just offered you 100. No, I'll take 50 and I'll come back here in 6 months. And if I hit this milestone, will give me 300. So you also want to walk out with a future commitment, not just with a check, with a future commitment. Because what is the lifetime value of an investor? This is another thing that we never think about. It's not a one and done. You never want to build a relationship of somebody just giving you a check and you leaving, because it's transactional. You want to build a relationship for years and years to come. And if you want people to invest in your vision, you better think about them. You better recognize how important they are to the process. You better acknowledge them in your literature, in your PR. That's another thing that we never do, right?
Such a great
The
point.
investor is somewhere like, yeah, how did you get this funded? Well, sort of someone wrote
You
me a
don't
check,
you don't
right?
communicate in 6 months. You're like,
Right,
okay.
right, and then when you come back to them, so how did you do? Well, I'm kind of working toward it.
Right.
But imagine, like, if you did a press release, and by the way, everybody should be doing press releases and everything that you do, because you want to gain as much attention as possible. If you did a press release and the first thing you said is, David wrote me a check.
Yeah.
And not only did he write me a check when I had nothing, and you still have nothing, by the way, but you're already creating a story. Media feeds us stories, right, and narratives all the time. Imagine if you could feed the story, if you created a narrative. When this is going to be $1 billion company, it's thanks to David. And I want to start acknowledging him right now while we're at the startup mode. Imagine if you started there. Just for the human, they just believed in you and they would read that. Do you think they would want to give you more money versus someone that never remembers them, never talks to them, never acknowledges them anywhere? Or even worse, they get press and they never mention the person, or they do, all of these marketing initiatives and they literally keep the investor behind the scenes because they think that that's how they should do it. But that person is a person. It's a human being, and human beings like to be acknowledged without asking.
I'm taking note of that because I've done the opposite of that. I've only talked about myself in the press releases we've done thus far, and nothing about the investors. So that's huge.
Yeah. You have to really start tapping into the human suffering of people feeling like they're being used, like they're unappreciated again. And all throughout our lives we go through this thing like, do people really care about me? Am I alone? And it's all spiritual things, but in business you can leverage that. You could leverage that. And I mean, imagine you said to an investor, like, I don't care if you write me a check, I'm promoting you, I'm putting you in my press release, and I'm doing PR, and I'm spending my own money on PR. And by the way, PR is an amazing tool that a lot of people don't know how to leverage. It's really, really important to understand. Media feeds you narratives, and I don't want to get too political, right? But during COVID and during any type of crisis, you're going to see in the media what the media wants to show you, right? But when we are raising money, and when we're doing anything as an entrepreneur, we don't know how to leverage that media. So for example, if you're doing something in the AI space, and there's a lot of competition right now, if you wrote a press release that you're the #1 AI company that's breaking ground in the waste management space, right? I mean, you said it, you wrote it. 95% of the times, press releases will let you print that, right? Especially if you have like good testimonials on your page, they won't care.
Right.
So that's going to get distributed. It's your job then to take that press release and to go to a bigger publication like Forbes and to say, I am the #1, according to, Newswire, I'm the #1 company in the space right now, and this is how I want to educate the public and do a free workshop so more businesses can leverage this amazing tool. The second Forbes picks it up all across your social media, you could say, according to Forbes, I'm the #1 AI expert. Can you imagine if you're raising money and you put that in your pitch deck, that according to Forbes, and you attach the article?
Right.
Except you created the whole narrative.
Right. So
you also have to be smart and you have to be resourceful, because a lot of the times is, why do we need money? For attention, for marketing, but you don't know how to get it. So it's a really important skill to understand that the biggest commodity is attention in any market, in any industry, but it's also positioning, because starting from the bottom is hard, right? It's really hard swimming like a salmon upstream in the AI world, right? Because everybody and their dog is now an expert, and everybody knows, someone that went to Harvard and they've developed their own thing, right? But it's so much easier, again, because the human brains, and Harvard did a study on this. There's something called, social proof. So someone said, you're amazing, great. But that someone, maybe you pay them, maybe that's your friend, maybe someone that likes you. So we believe it 50-50. Then there's something called the kitchen table logic, which is, according to Harvard study, XYZ is true. We don't know if it's true, but we don't question it, because we're taught since we're little kids to follow and believe authority. Harvard is an authority, so it's an authority-driven piece of information that you don't question, right? So it plants a seed of, it must be true. If Harvard said it, it may not be true. Right? But the highest form of social proof is media. Because we're used to, again, since childhood, if we saw it on TV, it's special. If we read it in a magazine, it must be true, right? Because we're conditioned to think this way. Now, if it's in social media, it must be true, right? So that's why it's our job as entrepreneurs to garner attention, but create your story. Don't allow someone that's working for the publication to say, this is the name of the company, that's whatever. Because
sure you're driving the publication.
Make sure that you create the story and the narrative, and everything that you do should be in the pitch deck. Because if you go to an investor and you show them, they don't know how much money you're spending on PR, but if you showed me that you're on a billboard on Times Square, that you're in Forbes, that you did all of those things, and you said to me, I'm doing this with you or without you, that's evidence to me. Because PR is expensive. Today, everything that I've just mentioned, you can get for about 10 grand if you're smart.
Really?
If you're smart, you have to be smart. You have to be resourceful. You might exchange favors with a reporter and promote them somewhere. You have to understand that people are always looking for leverage and for content. So now content is king. We want to understand who can we align ourselves with that either has our clients or has the attention, so we could trade that. Right?
Right.
Because we're just thinking very black and white of, I want what I want, I got the money, or I didn't get the money, and now I need more money. But the truth is, you need to become more resourceful and more creative, because you will never run out of ideas, and you will never run out of people who want to help you with your ideas if there's something in it for them.
It's amazing points, and I'm noting them too. With regards to publications, it's something that I was recently thinking about. If competition is out there, like you said, it's endless, especially within your immediate circle. Are you at all afraid with releasing insight into your company and what you're building publicly, or is your thought process competition doesn't matter, just build faster and better?
Well, there's three things here, right? Since you're controlling the narrative, you could give as much or as little as you want. Every good politician, if you study speeches, and we all, by the way, should do that. I still do that all the time. If you study speeches of politicians, they're always selling you stuff. They're always selling you their next campaign. They're brilliant salespeople. We just don't realize what they're doing. That's what PR is, right? You have to structure the story where you give just enough to pique curiosity, where, oh my God, this is the next, biggest thing, but without really saying anything.
So you think that's better?
Yes.
Always
yes.
in PR?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to, because PR is about generating attention. Are you going to get sales out of it? Maybe. But not sustainably. PR is not designed for that. You have to understand what every vehicle in marketing is designed for. It's brand. And brand is king over everything, right? So when people say, what's the ROI on brand? I mean, I don't know. If you're a new company and you have 2 employees and the media makes you look like you're a rock star and makes you look like you've got the greatest thing since sliced bread, investors will write you a check. But if you come in of like, I'm looking for $20,000 so I could, rent an office space, I mean, like, it's not attractive.
Right. Okay. There's so much there.
Yeah.
Let's bridge from there. You were mentioning earlier post-exit.
Yeah.
What was next, and then when did Social Club come about?
Yep. Then there was another recycling company in between. I had a staffing company which miserably failed.
Okay.
And I wanted to mention that company because I probably did like 12 things and 2 of them went big, where most people will just talk to you about what's successful and what's wonderful. Failing on your face is not pretty. And it hurts. It hurts our ego because it's the me show and I'm so amazing and this didn't happen from me and I'm such a victim. But the truth is, no one, if you read any book, if you read any in any religion, by the way, right? If you read any religious text, right? If you listen to any podcast, nothing worth doing is going to happen right away. Because if it does, look at people that win the lottery and then they lose everything, right? There's no sustainability when it happens too fast. And you have to fail because you're not really failing. You're learning things that you can never learn in school or working for other people. Because how do you know what your skill set is? How do you know what leadership is? How do you know what not to do? Yes, you could pay mentors, and I think that that's a great idea. I didn't know that that was an option earlier on. It's a great option. Yes, these are your shortcuts, but you're still not going to know everything. Nobody knows everything. You have to fail. It's part of the process. And if you're not failing, either you're thinking way too small, or you're kind of half-assing things and convincing yourself that you're so busy and you're doing everything, well, you're really not doing much. And a lot of us are really good at doing that. Like, I'm busy, I'm doing so many things, I'm wearing so many hats, nothing is happening for me. Maybe it's the market, maybe it's the industry, maybe not. Maybe you haven't failed at enough things to understand that you need to bring in a co-founder, or you need to bring in 5 people that have tremendous skill sets. Because if you look at Steve Jobs, he wasn't a technical guy. Right? He
wasn't?
No.
Really?
He wasn't a technical guy.
Wow.
He dropped out of college. Most people don't know that. He was adopted. He didn't come from a great family. His mom gave him up, right? Because when we look at people, we typically idolize them, not knowing what's behind the scenes. And when he almost died, right before he died, he said, it was like the saddest thing to hear this, right? I spent most of my life chasing the dream, and I've got the dream, and now I'm dying alone.
Wow.
Right? And I mean, if you read the book or you watch the movie, you'll see that he didn't have the best relationship with his daughter, and he never healed his relationship with his mom giving him up, and everything that happened in between. But the moral of the story is, you can be a person that puts people together. That's what he was. He was great at identifying the right talent and of making the vision so big that before there was anything else, there was just that vision, and people worked day and night to bring the vision to life, right? And most of us don't know how to do that because we think, what's a skill set, right? I'm great at everything. I have this wonderful idea. I could do everything. But you know what we really need, if you really look at it as a CEO, right? And most people don't understand what is the difference between a CEO, what is the difference between someone that's more operational, right? If you're a CEO, you're a visionary. You're not an operator. You're not going to be good at executing. But if you have a vision without execution, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Right? Some people are really, really horrible at raising capital. You know why? Because their nature is technical. And you have to understand what type of personality do you have. You have to understand how do you function, right? And it means you have to look at yourself. And a business can be the most beautiful vehicle for personal growth because you could identify what it is that's really unique and special about me and not do anything else. So for example, with Steve Jobs, and I've studied him immensely because there's just so much there, so much positive, so much negative, just such a great example. So when he dropped out of college, and most people don't know this, he studied calligraphy. And you would be like, why would he study calligraphy?
Yeah, it's such a random topic.
It's actually not. Because his whole vision was computers back then were clunky, ugly, and they were only for, corporate bureaucrats because consumers had no access, right? So his vision was to make the thing beautiful. And the way how he expressed beauty is through calligraphy. And when he was taking that class, that's when he was the most inspired to create something that brought beauty into the world. Like, can you imagine? Like, that was the vision.
From that seed too.
Yeah, right. I want to bring beauty into the world, and I want everyone, whether you're a student or you run a company or you're a mom, I want everyone to be able to express their beauty in a computer. Not a technical guy, hippie, guy that smoked pot, had no experience doing anything, right? And the person had such a big vision. But the key to all of his success, right, was number one, being very strong-minded. I mean, imagine building all this and being fired from your own company to go start another company and realizing that you love that company so much that you're willing to squash your ego and come back and ask for a job.
Crazy.
Like, just, can you imagine the character that you need to have?
Right.
And none of us want to look at that because that's what it takes. A lot of times, like, what does it really take? It takes that. And it takes you falling on your face and being rejected time after time after time. And it takes periods of what I call droughts, where things don't go your way, where everything is against you, where people don't believe in you, where you're not in a good space mentally, emotionally, financially, where people think you're crazy, you need to get a job, and everything in between. But inside, when you quiet yourself and you sit, hopefully, and you have a conversation with God, and you hear it loud and clear, keep going.
Right.
That's like, I think, the hidden thing that nobody really thinks about, because what you really need is that conversation with God to really identify what are my strengths and stop doing the things that you're weak at and stop blaming yourself and shaming yourself that you're not good at something, because there's someone else right now, I promise you, they're struggling, they're suffering, they're not in a good space, and they're so good at tech, or they're so good at something else, and it will be God sent to them to meet you, to be like, come build this thing with me.
So just be open to it, right? Tell us a little about Social Club. How did that idea get started? And then obviously it's manifested into something great today. So just kind of break that down for us.
I lived in New York most of my life. And probably for the past 10 years, I wanted to move here to Miami. And there was just never a great opportunity. My kids and their friends and, stability of living in one place. And I've never lived anywhere else. And there were issues in my marriage. And there were so many things where it was like, I don't know, maybe next year. And certain things fell apart in my life. I was involved in a project. This was on the heels of the second recycling company. And me and my husband made a decision to sue our business partner because he was doing certain things that were unethical. I really don't believe in lawsuits, but we both felt at that time there was no other way. So we get into this lawsuit. And another thing that I learned, never get into lawsuits.
Never.
Because never.
Avoid it by all costs.
As much as you can, because the the only entity that wins is the attorney, because attorneys drag everything out. We spent multiple six figures litigating the lawsuit, and we won the lawsuit. So you would think like, oh my God, that's amazing. $1.4 million plus interest, can't collect a penny.
Wow.
Not one penny.
Not one penny.
And I would never know that. Like, how would I know? I've never been involved in something like that. It was devastating. And it was probably the final coffin in my marriage, to be honest with you, because we built these things together, and it's very, very stressful. Like, just very stressful in the relationship and the way how certain things unfolded, right? And what I really learned through that experience is that, you know, money's hard. Making money is hard. Retaining money is hard. Multiplying money, it's really, really hard. And there was a part of me where I'm like, I'm just too tired. Like, I don't want to do anything. I'm tired. I was a victim. How could this person do this to us? And blah, 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 blah. When the truth is, there was plenty of red flags. Plenty. Just didn't want to see them. And there was plenty of opportunities to not work with this person. And there was plenty of opportunities to do other things. And there were certain things that were done in the business. Yes, more by him that weren't ethical. But just because I didn't do them, but I looked the other way.
Right.
So, you know, I have to look at myself and say, I participated. Maybe I wasn't aware of it so much back then. Maybe I didn't want to see it. But if I put, again, everything back on me, then I'm no longer, how could this happen to me? But like, what can I take from here that can make things better for me and for other people, right? And I'm sharing this. I typically don't speak about, you know, these things because they're really personal. But I want people to know that it's part of the game. Lawsuits, divorces, heartbreaks, and horrible, horrible situations where you're close to people and they steal your ideas, or they do unethical things to customers that you acquire. And maybe some of those customers are your family members, and everything that I'm mentioning is what went down. But again, hindsight today, if I would look at it with a very different mindset, it was everything to me was all about the money. It's going back to those pair of sneakers where I never ever wanted to say to my child, I can't afford to buy you sneakers. You're never going to have that. So at all costs, at any cost, I was going to make sure that I'm so successful, that I'm so whatever, that that would never happen. But God had a different plan for me. God really wanted me to understand what abundance is. And abundance is understanding that everything that you need is inside of you. So while I was out there for years and years chasing, and I still do to a degree, chasing the dream, everything that I was chasing was staring right back at me in a mirror. And one of the things that I feel super grateful about is discovering the Kabbalah Center, is starting to bridge my understanding of God and my understanding of how things are and universal laws. And I've studied spirituality, every religion, especially Judaism, probably for the past 25 years. And it never kind of felt like home to me. Like, I went to Jewish school, but I really didn't feel close to Judaism.
Right.
I studied Christianity, but I didn't really connect to that because in my view, a person is not a God. And I mean, there's many, many ways to go down this rabbit hole.
It's a whole different topic on its own.
It's a whole different topic. And then I studied Buddhism, where I think it's the most beautiful thing that we're all connected. But do I think I'm just like a tree? Not really, you know. So it all evolved when Kabbalah kind of puts things into very practical tools. Like, if you want to make money, go give something. And it seems like so simple, right? But most people will be like, well, I can't give because I don't have anything to give.
Right, yeah.
You have time. You have legs, you have arms, you have a mouth, you could speak, right? So there's so many things that you could give. And again, if you don't make it about yourself, if you said to yourself, what if someone right now is literally praying to God, like they're in the worst position of their lives and they think that there's no hope for them, and basically like they don't even know if they want to live, right? And what if I say something, or what if I do something, just something, and the person is like, oh my God, like there's God and there's hope. And their prayers will get answered through something that I said, or something that I did, or something that, or somewhere where I decided to show up, not for myself. Then isn't it all worth it? Like, isn't it all worth it to say, like, if this is the last day of my life, right, and I'm recording this podcast, and that's it, like, there's no tomorrow. If I would go to sleep tonight and be like, I mean, there's a chance, right, for all of us that it may be the last day.
We never know. Yeah.
But what if somebody heard this interview and somehow it triggered them to their own greatness, and somehow it made them feel their own power, and it made them say, you know what, maybe there is God, or maybe there is something outside of me that's helping me, actually, that's driving me, that's giving me these desires, that's making me a better person. I just haven't figured out what it is yet. Then it's all worth it.
Right.
Right?
Completely. What would you say is the one, I'm sure it's in many areas, but what's the most important spiritual tool you've learned through the study of Kabbalah?
One of the things, even before I got to the center, and it got even more solidified here, is my greatest teachers up to date. I mean, the sages of all sages have been my kids because they trigger me more than anyone else. Yes, they teach me things that I don't want to see.
Right.
They're direct mirrors, right? Because who else is going to tell you, you know, I think I'm so special and I speak around the world, and my son tells me the other day, you're so special, you're not Mr. Beast, you don't have 40 million subscribers, where's your Ferrari? Right? And you get humbled very fast, right? And then you're all into like, well, I don't need to have a Ferrari.
Right.
Oh, really? Why not? I mean, you tell us to have the best of everything. Where's your best? And you know,
and then you start to think about it. You're like,
yeah, exactly. So I think that it's really, first of all, having that humble attitude of like, a child can teach me, a stranger can teach me, a homeless person can teach me, because it's all coming from God. And one of the biggest tools that I'm getting as part of studying Kabbalah, and I'm continuing to study, is really understanding that all the wisdom and knowledge is already inside of me, right? So maybe because I've studied so much, maybe other people will feel different, but I feel like it's all there. But because the tools are so practical, and because some things are just so like, you could look on a physical level, like I don't know why, or I don't know how, but when I say a certain prayer, or I look at the 72 names of God, or open the Zohar, just something happens, and I can't explain what it is, and it's metaphysical, right? It's something that I can't touch, see, or explain, but it just makes me feel like maybe, just maybe, everything that happened until this point that was negative, that was hurtful, that may be still happening in some areas of my life, maybe it's driving me for the things that I really want. So instead of me shrinking my desire and feeling like I just need to settle in certain areas because it's easier and I'm used to them, there are tools here to help you to say, like, I'm not going to cheat on myself. I'm not going to give up. I'm not gonna, because you know what, my kids are watching me, and there's so many people that look up to me and that are watching me, not because I'm more special to them, because as a leader we go first, and we fall on our face, and we face adversity, and we share things that are hurtful. I mean, for me to sit here and to tell you, like, I'm going through a divorce, to tell you that I ever thought in my wildest dreams that I would be going through a divorce after being married for 19 years, practically half of my life.
Crazy.
And for me to say, like, I know that this is God's plan. Like, I know that everything is literally working out 1,000,000% better than what I could even imagine. I mean, I don't know that. I don't have certainty in me, but I have certainty somehow God has never abandoned me. He has never left me out. He has, like, and I have evidence of that if I choose to see it. In every bad experience, it could have been worse.
Right.
In every bad situation, it could have been 1,000 times worse, right? So if I choose to see it that way, then everything that's happening right now and everything that's going to happen is only happening in my favor, not only for me. Like, I really believe that it's not only happening for me, it's happening so maybe another woman can see the situation and say, oh my God, maybe it doesn't have to be the end of things. Or maybe a child, you know, that struggles with something can say, like, this woman was an immigrant. Her parents had nothing. They couldn't even buy her sneakers. I could do that. I could believe in myself. I could figure out a way. I'm resourceful. There's nothing so different about me, or it's not like God parted the Red Sea for me. I believe that we all have exactly the same ability to get blessings beyond their wildest dreams. But those blessings don't come without you saying to yourself, I will humble myself to know that whatever's happening that's hard, it's in my favor.
So hard to do.
Yeah, really hard to do.
Yeah.
Daily practice. and still hard.
Still hard, right? It
Yes,
never gets easier.
yes.
The last thing we'll ask you is if you could go back to your 15, 20-year-old self, what's one thing you would tell her knowing all you know today?
I love you. You're worthy. And everything that you're thinking about, you're not crazy, you're not wrong, and it's going to turn out so much better than you could imagine. Just do it, and do it quicker. I think that that's the advice that I would give to myself and to any younger person is fail quick. Because we sit on the sidelines for so long. It's not the right time. When I finish school, when I get married, or when this happens, and again, when God parts the Red Sea for me, and I know that it's for me, and He's going to give me a sign. I can't do it without a sign. The sign is now. I don't believe that anyone is in this world by accident. If you're meant to hear this, it's not by accident. I believe that every human being is great to a degree that's undescribable in words. God literally, and I say this to my kids every day, ripped a part of Himself and put it in our hearts, right? So while we're thinking that we're praying to some guy in the sky that maybe will grant us, if we're not too bad, our wish, it's really in your heart. Like, you know what to do, right? It's hard to be, disciplined. It's hard to restrain yourself. But if you said to yourself, the things that I want are like 2% of what I'm going to get. That's what's in it for me. I'm going to get the things that I can't even imagine because it's not just for me. And then everything just becomes easier because it's imposter syndrome. And every time we feel that we're not good enough, it's only because the attention is me, me, me. The second you said to yourself, you say to any mother, go work for 20 hours. She'll be like, I'm not doing that. Go do that to save your child. Oh my God, like no questions.
In a heartbeat.
No questions, like no conversations. Where do I sign up? Right? But how do we mother ourselves? How do we give that type of love to ourselves to say like, yeah, I am going to put in the time. I am going to go after my dream. I am going to go after the promotion, my soulmate, or whatever it is that's on your heart, because you're worthy. And even if it doesn't work out, it's worth it. It's worth it because you've lived, you've learned, and God has granted you another day to do better and a bigger opportunity than you could imagine.
Beautiful. Polina, thank you so much for being on the show. I personally gained a ton. I'm sure our entire audience did as well. Guys, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week.